Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah talk. In Shul this week we will be reading Parsha Shmini, but it will also be a special Maftir Torah portion known as Parah. Now, Parah is a very peculiar portion. It comes after Purim, before the month of Nisan, before the month with Passover in it, and it comes from the book of Bamidbar, chapter 19, where we read about the rules of the Red Heifer, some of the most difficult and mysterious rules that we have, in fact. It's Parshat Chukat, and a chok actually means a mysterious law for which we don't have a rule, for which we don't have an explanation. And these are the laws of purity. In fact, the highest level of impurity, maybe it's the lowest level of impurity. The most extreme form of impurity is the impurity that we get from touching a corpse, touching a dead body, a human being that was once alive, or right on that level or near that level, an animal, the corpse of an animal. So without getting too deep into why those are the major the major sources of impurity, well, it has something to do with life and something that was once alive and able to serve God and able to bring holiness in the world, not now being able to do that. Changes that change of status somehow makes this impurity, this tuma, it's called. It is just as mysterious why the ashes of this red heifer, mixed in a certain potion and sprinkled, will undo that impurity and once again make someone tahor, make someone pure. As a matter of fact, it says that throughout the giving of the Torah, the Midrash tells us every time God gave a rule about what makes someone impure, he gave the remedy, but not so much when it came to the highest level, the lowest level, the most extreme level of impurity, that of tamei met, that of impurity from a dead body. And Moses was confused, and finally he came along to the rules of the red heifer, and God said, "Oh, here it is. This is the remedy." And Moses said, I don't understand this. I guess that's why we call it a chok. Like God was saving that part, that ruling, when he wanted to impart to Moses that there were some things that you just won't understand. Midrash also imparts that Solomon, King Solomon the wise, once said, "I thought I was wise, and then I came to study the rules of the red heifer, and I realized I'm not so smart." Because the question is, how does this the ashes of this dead cow, sacrificed, made holy, impart purity to those on whom it's sprinkled, but the Kohen who makes the potion, he becomes impure from his contact with this dead animal? It's very confusing. It's very hard to understand. But I think that may actually be the point. Right, so we read this around Passover time for two reasons. One ancient reason. The ancient reason was Passover is coming. It's a mitzvah on Passover to eat from the Pesach sacrifice. In order to do that, you have to be in a state of ritual purity. And so this is a reminder in temple times, it's time to get ritually pure. Go to the mikveh, go get your ashes sprinkled on you if you need that, so that when Pesach comes, you can participate in the mitzvah of the Pesach. Of course, we haven't had the temple for 2,000 years, and so we don't eat the Pesach sacrifice. So it's not that we need to be pure literally in the sense of tuma and tahara, these laws of ritual purity and impurity. But Passover is all about a different kind of purity, right? About cleaning out the chametz of our lives and getting rid of all the puffed up, airy pride and all that, and making room for holiness, right? That which is represented by the matzah as opposed to puffed up bread, which represents delicious though it may be, which represents pride and ego and hot air. So that's why we read at this time of year the chapter of Parah. But it's also a great reminder to us that our job is to bring holiness into the world. We may not always understand exactly what that means or how to accomplish it, but that's why we turn to the guidance of Torah. That's why God gave us Torah, gave us mitzvot, gave us guidelines which to follow, so that we could always know at least the direction that we should go. It's not that we need to understand the world. All we need to understand is our part in it, our role to bring holiness into the world. When we follow the rules of the Red Heifer, it seems clear that no one can quite explain exactly why they are the way they are. However, what does it do? It removes tuma, it removes impurity from the world, and it creates tahara, it creates purity, right? It sanctifies this dead animal, and somehow by going through this ritual, it gets the ability to bring more holiness into the world, to bring more purity into the world. And maybe that's the message for us too, that we may not always understand the rituals that we're undertaking, whether it's praying day to day, week to week, month to month, or whether that's having a Pesach Seder and putting all those 6 funny things out on the Seder plate and reading through the Haggadah and its circuitous story of the Exodus rather than just reading from the book of Exodus. Right? We may not always know why we do the things that we do, but we have faith that by following these guidelines, we're bringing also more holiness into the world, bringing more purity into the world. The question that guides us as Jewish people, curious though we are, is not meant to be why. We spend lots and lots of time exploring why. It's okay to ask why. We should ask why. In delving into topics like the Red Heifer and so many other mysterious practices of our people and teachings of the Torah, we expand our knowledge and we discover wisdom that we did not know was previously there. But when push comes to shove, when it comes right down to it, the Jewish question is not why. The Jewish question is, what now? How do I move forward? How do I make this world better? How do I bring more holiness into it? How do I bring more purity from that which is impure? How do I bring more cleanliness to a world that sometimes seems filthy? How do I bring order, seder, to a world that seems confused? That perhaps is the message of Shabbat Parah. That perhaps is the message of Passover that Parah is getting us prepared for. That we have the ability to bring Seder, that we have the ability to sort of bring up from slavery and move forward to freedom. We'll take at the beginning of the Seder the bread of affliction, we'll hold it up at the end of the Seder as the bread of freedom and redemption, and it's the same matzah. That's our job. To use our rituals, to use our actions, to use our ability to bring holiness into the world, to transform even that which is mundane, even that which is lower than mundane, even that which is unholy, and bring it up to holiness. In that way we can bring more holiness into our lives, more holiness into the community, more holiness into the world. And by holiness I mean a sense of God's presence, an understanding that we are part of something bigger than ourselves, that we have a privilege to serve, to make that something more apparent, to make this world more beautiful, more livable, more spectacular for everyone, including ourselves. May that be our experience of Parah this year, and may that be our experience of Passover in a couple of weeks, and indeed, may that be our destiny to fulfill the mission to bring that kind of holiness into the world. Shabbat Shalom.